Okay, so the first step in doing a radius fascia piece is to gather a little information from the job site. So from the photos that you sent me, you have basically three choices when you're trying to generate a fascia detail or a rake detail, whatever you want to call it. First thing you have to decide is how many pieces you want to do it in. You could do it where it flattens out in the straight here. You could do that all in one piece. If you have a wide enough girth of material to get it all in one piece, generally I will split it into 4 pieces. So I'll split it here where it straightens out, split it at the top center, and I'll split it on this side where it straightens out. Okay. Now you can do that in any combination that you want. You can do 2 half pieces, you can do 2 straight pieces, and then a full radius piece. Totally up to you aesthetically what you want to do with it. Doesn't look bad if you put a couple of seams in it. So I generally do that. First thing you have to do is to generate a template. Depending on how clean your radius is in the field, there's a couple of ways to do that. If it's a perfect radius, you can take a compass and you can actually generate a perfect radius template with a compass. Usually isn't a clean radius, and it's usually not a perfectly smooth surface. So I'll take a piece of scrap metal and I'll put a piece of scrap metal on the surface so that when I draw my radius, I'm on something smooth and I don't get hung up in any imperfections on the radius. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and generate a template, and then from that template cut out my piece of metal to work with. So again, you can generate a template in any quadrant of this that you want. I'm going to do, I have a piece of cardboard big enough to span the whole thing, so I'm just going to span the whole thing. Okay, so my piece of cardboard for a template is tacked onto the face. Based on the photos that you sent me, you have a couple of different choices, but the choice that makes the most sense is going to be choice number 2. So number 1 panel would be just be flat, wrap onto your fascia piece. This part would be radius, this hem would be radius. Number 2, which makes the most sense from the pictures that you sent me, your panel's already prefabricated and they're being installed with this profile on the front of the barrel dormer. So this is the one we're going to work on right here. And choice number 3 is to try and wrap a piece up and around. Very difficult with a material that doesn't stretch like steel. So this, for both the material and the way that the job is set up, to me makes the most sense. So we're going to generate a template. That template is going to sit 1 inch above. We got to get aligned the depth of the roof panel here. Okay, and then we have to add, so we're going to be adding 1 inch, and then we're going to be adding like a little under a half inch, 3/8, half inch, something like that here. And then we'll put a hem on the bottom, and this hem will be at the windows, okay, where the window is already in place. So you need the, this is not the line that you want right here. The line you want on here is actually 1 inch above here. You can do that a couple of ways. Just use a 1 inch spacer. Okay, this is just a combination square. You can use that. Just use that to come down and generate your mark. Okay. Get your 1 inch mark off of that. You can take a piece of roof panel, and all I did was I just took a piece of roof panel, I cut out a piece that'll give me the proper height of a double lock standing seam height. Okay, and then you take that, you can use that to generate your bend line. So hold that on that surface. Follow right around that radius. Okay. So I've identified 3 key points on this radius. This is where it straightens out right here. So if I'm going to seam it, this would be the place to seam it. And I have a mark at the center, top center. Again, if I want to seam it at the top, then I'll have a reference line up top there. So I want to make sure that when I'm generating this template, I give myself a couple of match lines so that when I take this off of here, cut it out, cut a piece of metal, I'll have some reference lines to match up to my actual roof panel when we go to install the fascia, and everything's not shifted out of place. So just every 6 to 8 inches or so, give yourself a line, so when you put this back on, you have something to match up to. Alright. And I'm going to carry this line up to the center. And that mark is really all you need. From this, you can generate your 3/8 of an inch or 1/2 inch that you have to add this way. You're going to add a little bit that way, plus 3/8. And from there down, you can generate the width of your panel in relation to the window frame. So, from your drawing, it looked like it was about a 6-inch space. So from this line down, you would go 7 inches. And again, draw that radius off of this line to generate where you're going to be tying into the window. So I'm going to take this off, cut it out, get set up to fabricate my piece of metal. Okay, so this is the piece of cardboard that I took off of the dormer, and again, you'll have to decide how many pieces you want to do this in. If you want to try and do it in one full piece, then you generate a template for one full piece. Generally speaking, that gets too wavy, so I like to split it up into at least 3 pieces. So this is where this would straighten out here. So this would be straight down. So in theory, you could do a piece from here to the ridge. But for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to do the radius part. So radius starts here and ends at the top of the dormer here. And I'm going to just leave myself, when I do the template, maybe 3 or 4 inches on each side so that I have enough to overlap when I get to the installation part of the program. Okay, so I've cut out my radius and I've labeled the end of the radius where it straightens out on the rake, and I've identified top center, and this is the back of the template. Okay, so this is the actual footprint. I have to add on the top enough for our detail to come out 3/8 of an inch or 9/16, whatever we want to do there, or 7/16 rather. And on the bottom I have to add enough for a hem, so that's going to be at least a 1/2 inch on the bottom that I have to add. So a couple of different ways to do that. Again, you could make yourself a little spacer that'll give you that thickness and just drag it across there. One thing you don't want is for your pattern to shift, so I'm just going to tape it in place in a couple places so that when I do add the lines that I need to add, everything's going to be accurate. I don't have to get too crazy. Just a couple pieces is enough to hold it in place. I left enough overlap so my actual radius starts here. I left that much to mess with so that I have some material to work with if I have to slide it one way or the other to adapt. So on the top, I'm just going to take carpenter pencil, close enough. I'm just going to use that as a general template to get that mark up top there. Just drag that across the top of there. Okay. That's close enough. And I'll also work down at the bottom for the hem. So just turn the pencil the other direction and do the same thing. Just drag that right across there like that. That'll give you enough for hem. We'll make sure you label where your bend line's going to be. That's where we're actually going to bend the hem, because that's directly off of our template. So that's the key mark right there. And again, I want to transfer my top center mark, all of my match lines, so that when I put this back on, it's not rotated out of position. That'll be my end of radius. And that's just overlap there. And this will be center up top here. Okay, I'm going to cut that out. Okay, so I've taken my cardboard template, I've added to the top of the panel, I've added to the top of the trim piece, I've added to the bottom for the hem. This is the back of the template, okay? So I want this to be bent down and I want this to be folded back. The tool I'm going to use is the Wuko single wheel bender, okay? And the easiest way to establish your line is just keep this loose, put it on there, go into your mark, and then set it. Tighten it up. Do a quick check to make sure it's right. That looks pretty good. And now I gotta bend this. This tool bends this way, so I gotta flip this over. But I want this bent on the opposite side. Okay. So I'm just going to work my way around this radius. With this tool. I'll generally try to establish a line first and then come back and bring it to 90 degrees. Okay, once I get that line established, I'll come back and start working it. Don't worry about that little bit of waviness, we can clean that up later. Important thing is to have a nice clean line that's in line with your template. Okay. Once that's done, you have to take the Wuko hem tool, which I don't have with me right now. But it's one of these. Either one of these three will work. So it would either be the mini disco bender twist, which I prefer, or the micro. Micro is good for that particular bend because the micro's depth is only a ½ inch maximum, so you can't go much further than a ½ inch. This twist is a pretty good universal tool that you can use for a lot of different conditions. Okay, so you do the same process on the inside to establish the hem. Now what happens when you do this inside radius and you're past a thickness of maybe a ½ inch or so, metal wants to try and radius. So once that's hemmed over with the disco bender, in a lot of cases that'll flatten itself out. If it won't flatten itself out, you have a couple of options. Option number one is to take a stretcher, if you have access to a stretcher, and you can actually stretch that out of there. See how that flattened that right out? Again, not the best choice with steel. Steel doesn't want to stretch so much, and it's a little tough on the stretcher, but it can be done. Stretcher will work for this. Second option, again, if you feel like that radius is not tracking around the way you want it to track around, get a pair of these notchers. Now they have the blade on this is radiused. So if you take that, just do a notch about every 3 inches or so. Keep it away from the change of direction from the 90 degrees. Keep it back a little bit. Notch it like that. That'll take that arc. That'll take that radius right out of that piece. Okay, so I've got my piece made, radius, and again, all these little imperfections along here. If you just take the Wuko hem tool Run it across that, it'll flatten that right out. Be real nice, clean radius. Same thing with the bottom here. You can pick up just a little bit of imperfection in that. And again, if you run that hem tool over that, that'll make a nice, smooth, clean radius. Okay. All right, so you got it ready. You got to attach it to the roof. A couple of different ways to set that up. Now I had to cheat and notch this panel because I don't have a radius panel. But a couple of ways to clip that. You can take your roof clips, put a roof clip right on the edge, and just attach that right there. Now you gotta watch, the thing you gotta watch for is the wood splitting or the fastener not grabbing. So if this doesn't work, plan B would be to flatten out a clip like this and clamp it onto the piece, and then you can drag the piece out to the end, put a couple of screws in it that way. Okay, and again, if you have to, this is just a standard clip that I modified. If you have to make this longer so that you can get into the meat of the fascia to give you something better to attach to, then just custom make a longer clip and then set it up like this. Clamp one bottom, one in the center, and then one at the top where you're going to have your joint. Okay. Okay, so I use my panel to set my clips. Okay. Once that clip is set, then you can slide the panel back out of the way if you have that option. If you don't have that option, just leave it there. Okay. Leave the clamps on it. But I have that set up just like that. Okay, so I have preset my piece. Give myself a little bit of a lap right there where it straightens out. And again, if you want to carry that down, carry it down. Mark the center. And again, you wouldn't do that in the field because you don't want to see a magic marker mark, but just for demonstration purposes, I got a center mark. So once that's all set up, I can then set the roof panel. Or vice versa. I mean, if you already have the roof panel set and you have to do this after the fact, same. You can just do a clip like this, and this clip can be done after the roof panel is on if it's already on. Okay, now once you have done all that, you got your clips in place. Now you're gonna have to adapt whatever you have to adapt up against the window. If that's eventually gonna be a caulk joint where that ties into the window flange, then you can hide a pop rivet there and caulk over it if that's gonna end up being caulked. It's not gonna end up being caulked. When you hem this, you can actually put a cleat on the inside and hook onto that cleat. You may have to swing that onto that cleat through the radius. It's going to be a little bit difficult with the window in place, but you should be able to start at the bottom, slide that piece right up onto a hidden cleat if you're going to hit it, or hide it rather. So once you get to this point, if you have one of these tools, it's made for doing radius work. Okay. Same as the first stage tool, made to track around a radius. So. And that would be my finished fascia. I would not try and lock that twice. Try and lock that twice, everything starts to stretch and get distorted. So that single lock will give you a nice clean look right along that edge. Nice and finished, very clean. Again, you wouldn't have all these notches. I had to cheat to get the radius, so you'd have one nice smooth fascia piece. The only thing you got to deal with is how you're tying into the window, okay? And again, you have to decide how many pieces you want to do that in.